theories on the John F. Kennedy assassination abound all over the place. I mean, there's myriad number of uh, theories as to who killed JFK and why, and but one thing everybody knows is where they were. If you were alive at that time, where you were at that moment. I mean, I do, and that's another story in itself. It's outside of radio, so I'm going to leave that go. But today's story is deals with the last surviving member of the Warren Commission, who I got to do an interview with regarding this specific thing. And that, of course, was former President Gerald Ford. He was a congressman during the time, during the mid 60s, and he was on the Warren Commission, which investigated the Kennedy assassination and, of course, the killing of Jack Ruby afterwards and Lee Harvey Oswald. And I'd always been fascinated by that fact that he was a member of that commission. And it was a very controversial commission. A lot of people didn't like the results. There was a House Select Committee that came out later that came up with different results because the Warren Commission basically said that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone gunman, acted alone, and that was that. The House Select Committee had some different outcomes. There's, of course, been the New Orleans investigation by the district attorney down there, which was made into a Kevin Costner movie. There's been all kinds of theories. No matter what you believe, we may never know the actual truth, whether it was a gang hit or a Russian hit or a Cuban hit or a military hit, U.S. military hit, or whether Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. There's just a lot of different things going on with that, and it'll be there forever. But I was doing a radio documentary for UPI Radio on the 30th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. And I did something different with the program. There was no narration. I narrated nothing. It was all use of sound, speeches, including Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, and of course Jack Kennedy. We had lots of stuff from the archives for him, but I couldn't do it without something from the Warren Commission, and that was Jerry Ford, and he was the only one. He lived down in Palm Desert at the time, and we tried to make arrangements. Jack Anderson had just done a report, and he had also talked to Jerry Ford about it, and it was coming on the anniversary, and didn't come up with anything new, but they made a big deal out of it. And Jack told me when I talked to him that, Jerry Ford would say nothing, basically, would not change his stance on what the Warren Commission stood for and what their results were. So I tried anyway. I figured I had to get forward. We were in LA. It was a short drive to Palm Springs, reasonably short. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. And finally, they relented. And they said, okay, if you can come down on this date, Mr. Ford will speak to you and do the interview. And I said, great. So myself and Annette Haddad, who was one of the reporters on the Wire side, drove down. She got to do a story for UPI Wire while I did mine for radio. And he walked in, we chatted for a little bit. It was nice to meet him. Now, it was not the first time I met him. I had actually met him in Tulsa. We had a news conference. There was, I forget what the news story was at the time, but I was working for a radio station in Tulsa. And I had gone out to the golf course. And you always took your life in your hands when Jerry Ford played the golf course because he was known for hitting people who were not playing with him, just in the crowd somewhere. And the joke, of course, was if you want to talk to Jerry Ford, you meet him on the golf course. This hand you shake with, and this hand has $10,000 in it to give to him. So you do this and this, and that was always the joke. And I'm not so sure it was really a joke. There was some history there that some folks had. So, but anyway, so we got to his office and we sat down to talk. And Jack Anderson was right. Ford stood by the Warren Commission's report. And I'm not going to play the whole interview for you. I'm just going to play you this one clip, which basically says that, and you can hear his answer, and here that is.
Jack Ruby, and as the commission determined, that incident had no relationship to the actual assassination attempt by Lee Harvey Oswald in the killing of John F. Kennedy.
As we mentioned, there's been a lot of theories, the Louisiana theory, the Garrison theory, one recently from Europe, which I'm sure you're familiar with, many, many others. As a member of the Warren Commission, a man who was involved in the aftermath, as well as a target of two would-be assassins yourself while president, have you taken a look at these other theories as they've come out over the years after the Warren Commission? I know you've even written a book about an assassin.
I naturally have been interested in various speculative stories and books and other news media attempts to dredge up new theories as to what was involved in the assassination of President Kennedy. From my background as a member of the commission and my association with several members of the staff of the commission in the interim, I'm absolutely convinced that the commission's decisions were accurate, and I have found no credible new evidence that in any way whatsoever would undercut the commission's determination.
You don't have any doubt whatsoever, nothing that's come up over the years has even influenced you the slightest?
None whatsoever, and the House Select Committee's hearings and investigation, in my judgment, was a total waste of money and time. They came up with no new substantive, credible evidence that would in any way change my mind as far as who committed the assassination of President Kennedy.
We did the interview, and so you can see he wasn't going to change his mind. He had even written a book about it and some other things, and he was just adamant about the interview. But the cool thing was, it was just a really good chance to sit down one-on-one with a former president. We talked about a couple of other things, not very much. I still have the whole interview, which I will put up at some point. And if you're interested in hearing that, you'll be able to hear it. And I'll put that out on Facebook and say, if anybody wants to hear it, it's there. I'll probably put it on a podcast or something, or on my website, one of the two. And we'll deal with it at that point. But it was just a really nice time to sit down and talk with a former president. And he was very cordial, very nice man. And it was, but he gave the answers we expected, and that's all we could ask for. We didn't think we were going to break any new ground, but who knows? We may have, but we didn't. But we used that interview within the confines of the documentary, the radio documentary we did, and it went over well. And it was kind of fun. One of the things I have to mention about the documentary, I did bumpers. I did interviews with men on the street. Where were you when the president was killed? And people would, they'd give you 5 or 6 seconds. I was at my house. I was at school. I was here. I was there. And one really old guy, I asked, and I said, where were you when the president was killed? He said, well, I remember the train going through Indiana, and I remember, and I went down to see the train with the casket in and pass it on by. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's talking about Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They put the casket on a train and drove it across to a distance to lay in state. And but it was so funny to think that here I was. Everybody knew that I was talking about John Kennedy, and this one older gentleman, his reflection went back even further, which was really a nice reflection on history. Thanks for joining us, and we'll have another story tomorrow.